Hi, good afternoon and welcome to the next webinar for the Women's Festival of Cycling, brought to you by Cycling UK. My name's Jenny. I'm the Head of Development for England for Cycling UK, and we've got an excellent panel of speakers joining us today talking about increasing diversity in cycling communities. So this year's Women's Festival of Cycling takes place at a time where more people are cycling and more people are discussing issues of race, diversity and inclusion. Here at Cycling UK, we're really committed to making cycling inclusive for everybody, particularly those who are underrepresented currently. So in this webinar, we're going to look at how we seize the moment to enable us to reach as wide an audience as possible and encourage more women from all backgrounds to discover the joys and benefits of riding a bike. So with our expert panel, we're going to explore how we can all work to ensure cycling is inclusive and diverse, looking at insights from them about how we can reach communities and the value of building inclusive local cycling networks to encourage women of all backgrounds to access cycling. At the end, when we've gone through our questions, we will have an opportunity for a Q&A with the panel, and we'll come on to that again shortly. But the first thing for me to do is to introduce our panel of experts, and they're going to tell us a little bit about who they are and their cycling background. And we're going to start with Lorraine Dixon, who is from Joyful Bellas and Fellas Community Cycle Club in Birmingham.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Lorraine.
Right, can you see me?
I can't. Yes.
Woohoo! Hello, everybody. I'm based in Birmingham. I'm a ride leader for the Cycling UK community club called Joyful Bellas and Fellas. And the name came about because it was a bit of a reference to the woman who founded the club, Joy. And so we wanted to kind of acknowledge that. Apart from that, I'm also training as a bike mechanic, helping out in a local bike shop, working on key workers' bikes, and absolutely loving that.
Excellent, thank you very much. And we'll come on to far more about your experiences in the Joyful Bellas and Fellas as we move through the questions. Next, we have Vicky Davenport, who is from the Pride Out group in Manchester.
Hi, so my name is Vicky Davenport. I am secretary of the Pride Out Cycle Club, which is a cycle group for LGBTQ+, whatever other acronyms you want to put on there. We're a fairly new group, based currently out of Greater Manchester, although we're looking to broaden to further fields. And essentially, I've been in love with cycling since I was about 10 years old. Used to cycle to school and then cycled to university and then got a proper job, and everyone said, well, you need to learn to drive, and I've strongly resisted that. Yeah, I'm very excited to be part of this and really pleased that women's cycling is getting a bigger and broader platform, so thank you.
Fabulous, thank you, Bex. And then next we're going to move on to Sara Saeed, who's from the Cycle Sisters in London.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Sara Saeed, and I'm a trustee at Cycle Sisters. We're based in London, in particular East London, where we aim to inspire and support Muslim women to cycle. Our women's cycle group provide role models and a supportive and safe space where Muslim women can cycle without having to compromise their cultural or religious beliefs. I started cycling back in 2012 when I had a knee injury due to some condition, and my physiotherapist at the time advised me to take up cycling, and I have been cycling ever since. So that's me.
Thank you very much. And then our final panelist today is Ruth Smith, who is from Cycling UK.
Hello. Can you see me all right?
Yes.
Great stuff. So yes, my name's Ruth. I've been a cycling development officer based in Southampton for about 4 years, working for Cycling UK. So what is a cycling development officer? Well, generally, we work to engage with local communities through cycling projects, such as community cycle clubs and Big Bike Revival, both of which are Cycling UK projects. So during that time, the time I've been working in Southampton, we've worked with a diverse array of groups, trying to support women to cycle, working with families and kids, working with people from ethnic minorities, refugees, and people with disabilities as well. It's sort of all part of Southampton's drive to implement its citywide cycling strategy, and it specifically talks about a culture of cycling and trying to get everybody into this culture of cycling. So we try to include as many people as we can.
Fabulous, thank you, Ruth. I don't know if it's just me, but Lorraine, you're currently upside down. So I don't know if something's happened to your camera to spin you upside down, but
it's okay from here.
It's okay from
here. I assure you, I'm not defying gravity. I'm not quite sure. Perhaps I'll turn my webcam off and turn it back on again.
Oh, I think it's just to me. I'm not sure. Anyway,
yeah, I think
okay. We will press on regardless. So,
oh dear.
So we will have opportunities to go through some questions at the end. So for those listening, please do send through any questions that you might have for our panelists, whether specific to the clubs that they're running or more general about increasing diversity in cycle clubs. We'd love to hear from you. We'll answer as many questions as we can as we go through. But I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk about with you all, and I don't mind who takes this first, maybe Samara, if we start with you thinking about the Cycle Sisters, how do you think clubs and groups can be more inviting to women, and specifically women from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds?
Yes, I think, well, first of all, I think while cyclists and cycle groups are generally friendly and welcoming to all kind of people, to everyone really, but the culture of a group really matters. For example, what people wear, the timing of rides, the speed of rides, the bikes people typically ride, and what happens at the social ride stops. All factors that can actually exclude people. And with that in mind, some of the ways that people can actually overcome that is to use inclusive imagery that can really help to open up groups to those who wouldn't typically join. For example, focus on visibility of underrepresented communities in your branding and marketing. Of course, not in a tokenistic way, which reinforces stereotypes, but normalizing Muslim women doing different sort of cycling, as well as imagery showing people wearing everyday clothes. I think that's really important. Think about what language you use, not being too technical, but promoting cycling as an everyday activity that everyone can do. Make it clear, that you can wear whatever you want and bring any sort of bikes. That's from the top of my head, that's two that can really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there's some quite specific sort of things there to take into account when specifically looking at a particular culture or religion, as you're mentioning there with Muslim women. Yeah. Bex, did you find with setting up Pride Out and being a part of that and looking at the LGBTQ plus community, whether there was any sort of specifics that you needed to take into account, or was it just setting up a cycling club?
Yeah, so I think there's certain, like you say, culture of the club's very important, and I think our founder Richard was very, very keen to really promote as broader and most representative set of people as possible. I think it's very much in that initial meeting, isn't it? That initial, you rock up to wherever you're meeting, and I think that is the make or break time. And it's all about that first impression. Oh, hello, how are you? People coming up to you. There was a deliberate range of, like you say, speed of rides, lengths of rides. There wasn't an expectation that you would look a certain way. Say about clothing, whether you want to do the lycra thing, not the lycra thing, whether you've got a road bike or a £100 bike from a Halfords. I think there's a lot about that. I think in our group as well, we were particularly keen to get as many women there as possible, and also for people that were trans, to try and make them feel as included as possible and make sure we weren't inadvertently not excluding people, but making people as welcome as possible. And we've thought about on our rides, particularly in that first perception. How do we make people as inclusive as possible, and how do they want us to do that? So if we know people are coming, we'll send them an email, say, or, you know, do you want us to come up to you and say hi? Do you want to have a buddy when you meet there? Or, you know, all of these things, because I think, like every club we ever do, it's that first initial few minutes, you know, and then once the ice is broken, you know, cyclists tend to be a good bunch of people, and then it all flows naturally. But I think that first perception, and even the preamble before, is really, really important. And like you say, on your literature, on your branding, on your website, whatever, to try and make it not look all like the same kind of person, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lorraine, is there anything, Joyful Bellas and Fellas has been running for some time now. It's a really well-established club. Is there anything that you guys do to engage people from different communities? Is it about the whole community? How have you sort of approached that to ensure it's as an inclusive and welcoming environment as possible?
I think, as the other speakers have said, I think it was really important how we started. We started about 2016 or so, and that was basically because a number of people were attending a kind of a rider confidence group that was running at a community centre here in Birmingham, and it only runs for about 6 weeks, and then there you are, off you go. And Joy, who I said was the founder member, wanted an opportunity. She's a black woman like me, wanted an opportunity to ride with other riders. And because she got into riding, like myself, in terms of fitness and health and so on, that really coloured the fact that people felt able to come along and to be a part. And being here in Birmingham, it was really important that it was representative of Birmingham. So white, black and Asian involved in the club as well. And people have rocked up on various different types of bikes. Some people have got really into their cycling and have spent money on fancy bikes. Others cannot afford their own bikes, and we have a really good system here where people can borrow bikes, because that's the other thing. To get a decent bike, really, if you're going new, you have to spend some money to get a decent bike, one that will change well, that one that will run efficiently, and that means that you've already got a barrier for certain communities and certain people, and so we were able to run this club along out of various cycle hubs that were around the city, and where people could actually lend. In our case, we have these orange bikes produced by Raleigh, brilliant bikes, hybrid, a great way to start out. And then some people have gone into mountain biking type routes, some people have gone into road bikes, but the majority of people are still borrowing those bikes for various reasons, really. And we don't go into people's particular circumstances, but you know, bikes can in terms of their costing can be prohibitive for some people.
And is that something, Ruth, and then through your role, sort of looking at setting up opportunities for people to cycle from, you know, across the community and across Southampton where you're based? Do you think it's something that is, you know, and are there some areas that are more inclusive than others? And I guess that, picking up on Lorraine's point there about access to a bike, how is that something that you have experienced to be able to overcome to provide opportunities to cycle?
So within the Southampton context, a couple of the groups that we've been setting up in the city, access to a bike really is, and also confidence on that bike, those feel like the two determining factors in whether the club will be successful. a lot of people, especially if you're wanting to work in highly urban areas, a lot of people either they'll feel the cost of a bike is prohibitive, or they don't have somewhere safe to store their bikes. In fact, that's one of the major problems, especially if you're living in a flats or you're living in high density housing. Somewhere safe to store your bicycle and then to ride it to a meeting point is actually really difficult, and it's a big barrier for a lot of people. So actually having somewhere where you can just turn up and you can just borrow the bike and have it set up for you and then leave it at the end is really helpful. So trying to find a venue where you can store bikes, store them safely, is really key. Especially also if you want to cycle with adapted bikes or cargo bikes or other bikes that enable you to cycle with children as well. The cost of them could be quite prohibitive for some people, or they might not want to invest in them initially. They're not too sure whether they want to go out and buy a big expensive cargo bike, not sure if it's right for them yet. So having somewhere where you can borrow that kind of bicycle and ride it with people and be shown how to ride it confidently seems to really help. So we tried in some places to reduce those barriers by having bikes that people can borrow, trailers that people can borrow, access to cargo bike schemes where they can borrow or try out a cargo bike for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we've talked a little bit there about a couple of the barriers that that people might face or that might be prohibited to getting involved in cycling. I guess open to all of you really. Are there any sort of barriers that you have felt to getting involved in cycling that perhaps you've had to overcome, or any sort of specifics that you've supported with someone else? Lorraine, we'll start with you. Hand is raised.
I think as some of the sisters have said before, your iconography in cycling, the iconography in cycling is very white, very male, and that kind of for me, for others, that was it was like saying cycling isn't for someone that looks like me, a fat black woman. You know what I mean? And iconography is a real issue, a real downer in terms of saying that cycling can be just an ordinary activity that anybody can do, and my concern is that that's going to continue to be the case, particularly because prescriptions to bikes and so on will again be about fat shaming, will be again about saying if you look a particular way, is cycling it for you, except as a prescription to becoming this kind of imagined image of what a cyclist looks like. For me, that's a real problem.
And do you think, I guess again to any of you, that there are ways that you've, through your groups, really tried to sort of combat that and allow it to be seen as that normal everyday activity that it is for someone like you? Sam, Bex, if there's sort of any examples of that through yours. Yeah, Sandra?
Oh, I mean, I think I agree with Lorraine. I mean, this is one of the reasons why Sara Javid, the founder of Cycle Sisters, has actually started in the first place. She just joined. I think she was 30, and she realized she hasn't been cycling for years, and completely found to get back into cycling can be sometimes intimidating. So she set up a group just by herself and her friends and two of her sisters-in-laws, and they just started out of needs, to make sure there is a supportive, inclusive, sociable rides for people who looks like her. And years later, this has grown to multiple groups, and hundreds of women actually ride these. So sometimes you really, if you see people who are doing it looking like you, it inspires you and empower you to join in as well. But it also, like, I can think of an example. I'm just going to say this example very quickly. This happened to me personally this time last year. I wanted to challenge myself to do 35 miles. You do the Google search, you find out which rides is happening at your locality, and I'm not like, I'm very aware this is like a group that I haven't ever been in, but exactly what Beck said earlier, that initial 5 second, that initial 20 second of the welcome and the introduction and how you base yourself into the group is very crucial, which I didn't really find in this group in particular. You come in and you just know it. You know the way you've been looked at, you know the way you've been assessed from top to bottom, you know the way your bike has been judged in the first 20 seconds, and you're still like, because I'm a confident cyclist. Nobody actually has spoken to me about my experience in cycling. I've done all the MOT check in my bike before I head to the meeting point. I'm really excited. I cycle mainly purely out of joy and to explore London in different light. And we got into the rides. We 10 miles in. There's 2 ride leaders. One of the ride leaders' bike broke. She had a puncture. It took 45 minutes to fix that puncture. I'm really relaxed. Everyone is relaxed in the group. But the other ride leader looks at me saying, you know what, this is funny. I only thought it'll be you out of everyone in the group who will give us a problem today. And that is very problematic, And she's like, your bike is a single speed. I really thought, if any bike, it would have been your bike. And it kind of affirmed that feeling that I felt in the first second that I arrived in the group. But you're thinking, oh, it's all in your head. Just keep cycling, keep pedaling, get to your destination. And it's like, and have I ever been back to that group? The answer is no. Would I ever?
No.
Maybe not. And that's what it is. So it's really crucial, that we really welcome everyone. If we are saying we have policies in place, which this group, by the way, does, that is for everyone, you really have to adhere it, and you have to breathe it, and you have to abide it.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that from the roles that you are all in through setting up these groups, something that good that can come out of that negative experience is that you can ensure that your environment will not provide that experience to somebody else. Beck, sorry, was there something you were going to pick up on that?
So yeah, just 2 points. I think what it comes down to is when you go to a group, you don't want to feel other. You want, even if you don't look the same as everyone else, you want that feeling of not being the odd lady out or odd person out. And people need to, as you said, really welcome you, not just in the verbal. I think buddying is good. I think especially if people say, can someone be my buddy or not, but offer that to people. I think the other thing is just being just mindful, Samira, that person who said that, what the hell were they thinking? And what, to them, they probably never thought twice about it. But, that's it. That's, if you had any doubts in your mind, you ain't going back to that group again, are you? You know what I mean? That was just that probably, doing this again. I think in terms of inclusivity policies, and, there's lots of things that you read, and they've got the equality and diversity bit. But I think that the group has really got to live and breathe that. And for example, in our organisation, which hasn't been running that long, we had someone that was putting things on social media that who was in our group that wasn't really representative of what we were trying to achieve. And it wasn't that blatant, but it was just the tone, and it was being pinged to all of our people on our social media, and it was enough that we said that's not okay, and actually we asked them to not be part of our organisation anymore. And if we've just been paying lip service to that, I think it would have been allowed to carry on, because it wasn't code red, it was sort of code yellow. I think you really do have to stick your colours to the mast of these things. And if you want to be inclusive and you want to welcome everyone, you've really got to be almost in people's faces about it, and stamping out any kind of creating the other, because we all get that enough in all parts of our lives. And when we go, this is a club, this is for fun, so it should be there should be no any kind of shaming for anyone.
Absolutely. I think what you've both mentioned there about sort of living and breathing that the culture of what we're trying to really promote here, that the policies and paperwork is excellent, and it has to be the start point in a lot of cases. But if it's not being put into practice, then it's going to it's not going to have the positive impact that we would hope. Do you think, Ruth, from your perspective, do you think that lockdown has encouraged people to cycle more from underrepresented communities, perhaps? And if we have seen those increases, how can we embrace those changes and really try and continue that increase in cycling levels?
For sure. I mean, I think of all creeds and colors, and everybody has been cycling more during lockdown. Once you remove cars from the equation, it just becomes infinitely more attractive to cycle. Anecdotally, I've known of some people who've definitely been cycling more in lockdown, and most of the time, the only reason that they're keeping it up is because there's high quality infrastructure that they can ride. The number one thing that puts them off, that puts everybody off, but also you see in surveys, especially women, they generally talk about cycle safety a lot more than men.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the thing that puts women off more than it does men, and so you find lower instances of women cycling. Um, it's always about the quality of the cycling experience, the infrastructure that's available. But certainly, there's been a couple of families that I know from there's an inner city part of Southampton, which is sort of high density housing. It's got it's a very diverse community. There's a lot of refugees would settle in the area as well. A lot of newcomers to the city tend to settle in this community, and the couple of families that we were working with teaching their kids how to cycle have now started cycling to the Common, which is a big park in Southampton. And they are able to access that Common because there's a segregated cycling pathway that their kids can cycle on safely. And so instead of walking there or driving there, they're now cycling there as a family. So that's two families that are doing that. I was trying to lead a sort of impromptu bike ride on some of the pop-up cycleways that we have in Southampton, and it indicated the difference between the quality of infrastructure. The new pop-up cycleways, for the most part, just are painted lines for the moment, mainly because there's a delay in getting wands and other means of segregating the cycleway out. So they're just painted lines at the moment. So there was someone turned up to the ride who felt very safe on the segregated cycleways, and they rode those segregated cycleways regularly, but felt very unsafe cycling on roads. And I coaxed them to try out the painted cycleways, and they did really well. But after a while, became too overwhelmed and had to stop. So we were next to the park, so we were able to come in. So it really did indicate what the difference is in keeping people cycling, especially post lockdown. Yeah, and they were quite happy cycling on the roads during lockdown because there was virtually no cars. Incidentally, so there was this is separate to cycling on lockdown, but it's relevant to the case of this person. Was that Cycling UK, they'd launched they'd supported Stonewall's Rainbow Laces campaign, so for more equality and inclusivity in sport. So I got my rainbow laces on that day, and this person, they'd introduced themselves as non-binary, and they were using there as gender signifiers, and they were also wearing rainbow patches as well. So whenever we came in the park and I chatted to them and sort of gained a rapport, I think it just made it easier, the fact that we were both wearing rainbow things, you know. It was just a little something, just a little kind of like symbol that if you are wearing this, then everyone is included in your ride, and you're aware of that.
Absolutely. Yes, Samra.
Yeah, and I think it's been quite just even visibly quite something really quite beautiful just to see so many people during lockdown out on their bikes. But particularly in Cycle Sisters, we actually carried out a survey to all our members to find out actually what cycling they have been doing during lockdown, if any at all. And we were quite surprised to see that, you know, that 85% of our members have actually done less than the recommended activity of 30 minutes a day for exercising, and you know, about 53% haven't cycled at all during lockdown, and only 11% are cycling about regularly. And when we look down to the reasoning, it was not being confident to ride by themselves or on the road, despite the cars not being there, difficult to find time with family and other commitment, particularly obviously schooling, don't know suitable routes, or family can't cycle, therefore I can't cycle on my own, or not having a bike, or bikes require fixing. So this is actually gave us during lockdown as an organisation to think through what kind of support, giving our social rights obviously on our own pause, what could we do to help our members. And we came up with, you know, a weekly suitable routes that we've been sharing on our WhatsApp group, and it's so nice to see people actually, in particular our ride leaders, are going to these routes, and our members, and bike buddies, and that's been really popular within our members. They've been meeting on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, with social distancing, going to the routes that we've actually advised, and we'll be giving advice and support on biking, as well as trying to see who can give them one-to-one cycle training during this period. So I think it's really important to see, like, even though there's about 6 to 12% increase according to Sport of England about women taking up cycling, it's really important to understand what the other barriers are and how we can overcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lorraine, was there something you wanted to follow on from?
Yeah, I really want to concur with what both Ruth and Summer have been saying, because in Birmingham we have a little bit of infrastructure here, and a part of that is the canalways. There's a real issue with the canalways. They've no lighting. So what do you do at night? The fact that at certain parts of those canalways, women have been attacked in terms of people trying to get them for their money or for their bike or whatever, really. So for me, having real infrastructure in safe spaces, well lit and segregated from traffic, is one of the key areas to encourage more women and other people actually into cycling, but especially for women as well. People often talk to me as if I'm some kind of superhero because I actually ride on the road. You ride on the road? Like, I'm completely crazy, but I understand that it is crazy, really, particularly because here in Birmingham, you know, people are addicted to the car, and you know, I saw more bikes on the road, definitely during lockdown, and I'd love that to continue, but the cars have increased, and until we get that level of infrastructure to make people feel safe, then I suppose there's going to have to be other avenues, like, as someone was saying, making sure that we signpost people to safe routes, and that's what we do in our club as well. We organise rides and utilising safe infrastructure that's here in Birmingham, or quieter roads, so that opens up the possibility for people, when they're not on our rides, to utilise that. At the moment, sorry, I was just going to say, at the moment we're slowly reintroducing rides within government guidelines, so no more than 6 people, including the ride leader, that kind of thing, cleaning, that sort of thing. And unfortunately, because the community centres with the hubs attached are still closed at the moment, it's meant that that's kind of closed off access to bikes for some people. So the only people that are turning up are people who have bikes, really, which is a shame, but hopefully that will change as this situation changes, really.
I guess that's something we've talked about quite a lot through this discussion, is around that community feel and the welcome and the buddies and that sort of thing. How do you think we make the new normal this sort of more inclusive group for clubs and new cyclists? How do we move from it being, well, this is what we do because we're an inclusive club, to it being, this is normal for a cycling club or group? Bex, I don't know if you want to start with that.
Yeah, I think it is about culture. And just promoting that, but it's also about being almost aggressive when people overstep the line or come close to it, because I think you can role model that, can't you? And I think that is important. I also think don't know, it's been quite a crazy few months for everyone, I think. However coronavirus has touched your life, it will have done. And then I think there's almost this desperate desire, hopefully something we've learned from this is the importance of community and the solidarity. So I'm hope, as well as, what's important, I think a lot of people have gained more of an appreciation for the outside world and exercise than they did do. So I think those, creating a welcome, creating a culture, being not, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but really defending that when people think it's okay to sideline people. Hopefully that will be enough. And I'm hoping, this is a tipping point really, and particularly when it comes to the cycle infrastructure, because that's everybody, unless you've grown up cycling everywhere, which isn't everybody. I think that is the entry level. And if you crack that, and if you create cycle infrastructure, if you create, for example, like they're not called Boris bikes anymore, but like some, that those kind of, Manchester doesn't have those, but most other cities do. So that if you can't afford your own bike, you've got access to one at a reduced rate, or making a bike. You won't always be able to. For example, if you're going to catch a train, you might not want to take your bike, but you could use a bike share scheme. I'm hoping the combination of all that, and also the way we conceive cycling. If you look at other, Copenhagen and other European cities, it's not seen as a, there is a sport element to cycling, but cycling is also a perfectly legitimate form of transport. And I think a recognition anyone can cycle. You can wear what you want. You can either be as bling or as humbling as you want to, and it's as natural as walking. And I think a combination of those things, and particularly as women, that we're not objectified for and you can wear what you want. You can do it. I think hopefully the combination of all those will mean that in a number of years' time, without any disrespect, we wouldn't need a panel like this to say how do we get more women cycling, because they'd all be doing it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, you're so right, Bex. Like, I think people forget that bike is a mode of transport. One of the, when we are in the same survey that we've carried out during lockdown, we've asked our members what journey are you trying to make with your bike during this period. And I know if the top one was obviously for exercising, but a lot of it just daily errands. I want to run a daily errand and shopping, and I don't want to go on the public transport and commuting, from A to B. And I think we shouldn't be losing sight of that, just because there's loads of people using it as a method of actually sport,
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple of great questions in actually from people watching, so I would be really keen to just run through these for you. There's a couple that are around running cycling groups. Has anyone run a cycling group for parents with babies, like a parent and toddler group, but on cycles? And then the second one linked to that, and then I'll come to you, Ruth. So do the groups find that childcare is an issue for reaching more women cycling? And do any of the groups actively provide support for this? And then there's a different question that we'll come on to, which I think will be a really interesting one based on some comments we've just made. But Ruth, do you want to pick up on the parents and toddlers question?
Yep, certainly. So, well, it's been really scuppered by lockdown, unfortunately. We were about to get rolling with it, and then lockdown happened. But Eastleigh Borough Council and Southampton City Council have come together to provide some funding to start up a women's and toddler cycling group in the Eastleigh area. There was quite a lot of barriers to overcome with that initially. First of all, it was purchasing the most appropriate bikes that would suit the most women. It was also trying to figure out what kind of equipment to use. They ended up settling on trailers. And I had wondered whether things such as baby seats or attachments would have been more suitable. But ultimately, they've settled on trailers for toddlers, because if the mum were to take a tumble, then the baby would still be protected. The trailer wouldn't fall over. So I think that's quite a good consideration. But with that, then you have to really think about a good, safe venue that's suitable for especially beginner women cycling and starting out. That's away from traffic, that's quite peaceful, calm, but also wide enough to accommodate those trailers. So the first couple of venues that we tried out weren't suitable. They were in parks, but the quality of the paths weren't great. So we've eventually placed it at Places Leisure in Eastleigh, which has quite a good park system. It's also where a Cycles for All scheme is situated, so it's already got quite good wide paths that could be improved. Some of the drainage and things could be improved, but overall it's a really good venue. The only issue is just getting storage sorted at the place so far that they're paying for electric vans to transport the bikes to and from their storage place. So just trying to get storage sorted out there. And it's led mostly by volunteers, female volunteers who have already kind of been through the whole thing of cycling with trailers and getting their like through that crash course of like getting their toddler in a trailer and cycling with them, and they're very sympathetic to people starting out. We've run a couple of trial sessions. First of all, starting outside, and then tried to move some indoors where we had a very big, extensive indoor space, and they were very popular. And it kind of ran them as kind of drop-in session, so that women, families would be able to pop in with their toddlers and just try it out for a short period of time while the kids got used to being in the trailers. And hopefully this will provide a stepping stone for being able, introducing them for longer rides once the kids get used to being in the trailers, because that's a major barrier. So we've learned a lot from that. We've learned a lot about the temperament, rough temperament of a 2-year-old, what they're like inside a trailer, and also trying to make the women feel as comfortable as possible. Initially, the money's been specifically for women. I hope it could open up to families in the future. And there's been a wide variety of sort of women that have turned up have been sort of people who either have not cycled for many, many years since they were children, or they've been women who were very keen cyclists, but specifically because they had kids, they got off the bike, they put it away. It's cars because they have to do so many multimodal journeys. Multitask journeys where they have to get the kids to playgroup, and then they have to go shopping, and then they have to go to work and things like that. So don't see the bike as a transport option. Childcare has actually come up, sort of answering the second question. Childcare was one of the issues that came up, especially for the women volunteers. So they have small children of their own. During lockdown, that's the difficulty that we've had with sort of getting the rides back up and running, is that obviously the schools aren't running they're to the same extent. So they aren't able to they have to mind kids up until September. But there was the option that Places Leisure, it has a creche, and they were quite amenable to us sorting out a free creche service for volunteers to be able to leave their kids if that was their major barrier to volunteering.
Great. And anyone else, any experience of Sara?
Oh no, I'm just going to mention just quickly, like this question actually has popped up really quickly during lockdown. So from our members, which actually we ran an online Zoom session on the 9th of May about cycling with kids, all the tips and all the our founder Sarah Javis, she's actually a mother of 3 children, and often she's seen in East London cycling with her kids on her bike. So she led the session, being a cycling instructor as well. So if you go to YouTube and Cycling Sisters, our main YouTube channel, you will find the session there. There's lots of tips there. There's a lot of questions that she addresses through here. But pre-lockdown, obviously, kids were in school, so all our rides are around that to ensure a lot of parents and women with kids are included in our rides. So that is something our ride leaders often take the lead on. But obviously right now, obviously it's a big issue. Yeah,
absolutely. Beth?
So obviously we're a fairly new organisation, and like everyone, lots of our plans were scuppered because of the COVID. But we, when we were brainstorming ideas, we came up with the idea of having rides at different times, some in school time, some in the evenings during the week, some at the weekends, and having a spread so that people might be able to find their own, childcare solutions, having some shorter rides because not everybody's got the luxury of being able to do a 4 or 6 hour bike ride. So making sure there were some, you know, shorter rides that people, you know, could work around childcare arrangements. And we were sort of thinking about organising some sort of like family rides out together, but obviously that's been kicked into the long grass really with the COVID. But hopefully down the line, you know, the combination of all those things, and I would love it if we could get a Pride Out, you know, parents and kids ride together. That would be lovely. But I don't think there's one approach, is there? There's lots of, you've got to try and think as many solutions as possible. So hopefully the one will suit.
Absolutely. Got lots
just to concur with everybody else, we haven't specifically advertised our rides as including kids, but because of the nature of the rides we do across the city at different times, or did, people were able to bring their children along with them if they so chose, as long as they were accompanied. We couldn't have random kids turning up for all kinds of safeguarding issues really that might raise, but as long as they were accompanied by a carer / parent, they were welcome. Because a lot of our rides, shorter rides, you know, easier rides, some are beginner rides, some are intermediate, some are more advanced. As we have developed as a club, some are more advanced, so they tend not to attract folk with smaller kids. But folk have gone along who've got older children who are more than capable of doing the miles involved and the speed involved in those rides. So people have accessed where they could really.
Yeah, fantastic.
It is about that flexibility, really.
Exactly, yeah, that flexible approach just seems to be coming through as so crucial. We've got absolutely loads of questions coming in here, so I'm going to move us on. So, question here, see who wants to take this one on. Should we create our own cycling advocacy organisations for diverse women, or try and forge a path within established, predominantly male cycling advocacy groups? Which should come first? And I guess that comes back to the question we were asking earlier about making it the new normal for inclusive cycling groups. Is it that you have an inclusive cycling group, or a cycling group that is inclusive? And I think it sounds like, from what we're talking about, that there are great things happening, but until that culture changes and becomes the norm, perhaps that separation and having the inclusive cycling group, or the Muslim women cycling group, or whatever it might be, is still needed until we hit that point where we feel it's just a part of the norm for cycling.
I think that's the case in point. I think for us, the name, we went with Bellas and Fellas to actually emphasize this was a mixed group. But as Bex and Samra and Ruth have said, it was very much about the culture, really, which meant that we've had a lot of women involved in the group, and women who look like us, women who are women are of all sizes and shapes and so on. The culture is the key thing. But I agree with the questioner, really. I think until there's real check, because where we're coming from isn't the nature of what things are, and certainly Samra's experience actually suggests that, and some of the experiences I've had, you know, kind of remind me that we're not there yet, and so we do need those. And I'm aware of, you know, another cycling organisation that has a specific programme specifically for women for this reason, because I think for women sometimes we need that separation to feel safe, and also to feel stronger. I remember I was leading a women's group here in Birmingham, and there's always an issue about, you know, two riders riding abreast, even though it's perfectly within the codes of the highway code. And we had this really aggressive man in a car saying, "You women need to get off the road. You need to get off the road," like this. And it just kind of, but because we were in quite a solid group, there was 10 of us, you know, there was strength in those numbers. And I don't know whether the guy was, you know, he couldn't stand the fact that there was a bunch of women on the road, or just didn't like women. I don't know what it was, but it kind of gave strength. It gave strength to us as women being together. So I think until things really change, perhaps we do need that bit of separation as well.
And that links really nicely actually onto one question that we've had here, which Lorraine or Sara, I don't know if you want to pick up on. I mean, Lorraine, you kind of covered it there. So I'm really passionate about increasing diversity in cycling where I live, both work and personally, but I have sadly faced a lot of criticism and backlash, including witnessing offensive language towards underrepresented groups, mostly from white, able-bodied, middle-aged men who are dominant in the sector. I was therefore wondering if you have any advice or techniques for how to overcome this and be able to move forward with everybody on board. So I guess it comes back to that setting up of groups and getting people on board with what you want to do, and how we can try and create allies and a positive force rather than negative. Sara?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen even during this lockdown a lot of a lot of people actually reaching out to us saying, you know, I've seen the work that you guys do. How can I do that in my community? How can I do that in my locality? You know, and we've been completely overwhelmed by the uptake and the interest into our rides, and that's all thanks to our ride leaders who've been prominently ambassadors to everything that we breathe. But we have developed a model of community cycle group that, you know, aim to be supportive, sociable, and safe space for Muslim women to discover the joys of cycling. And this model is actually is currently being trialed and applied in places that have actually reached out to us. So that's Hounslow, Tower Hamlets, Newham, Croydon, Wandsworth, and Hackney. And we're providing a model that is sustainable, you know, that we can provide the support from the comfort of where we are based, but it means we're giving them all the learning or all the know-how or the rich knowledge that we've actually you know, we've had over the years. So people don't actually have to do any errors. You know, they can actually just start from you know, trial, tested, it works, and it actually can be lasted. Because I think one of the feedback we often get is like, how can your social rides even still run in snow and rain and heavy rain, and still you have a high attendee? And that is because we all show up, and our ride leaders really take their role as ambassadors and as champion very seriously. So and also it goes back to the story of how we started. You know, we started with really small group, and I think you know, while people really want to do something really quite prominent and, you know, social media viral, you know, you can really start something really, really small, and you can just grow naturally, and keep you know, keep in mind why you want to start in the first place and what are your motivation to start. And I think if you keep hold to that, your values, any issues or challenges that you encounter, you'll be able to overcome.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really nice. I've got time for one more question, and then I'm going to ask our final question so we don't run out of time. But Bex, this is a question specifically for you, please. Bex, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on promoting women-only rides. Some people find them less intimidating, but they could exclude trans and non-binary people if promoted in this way.
Yeah, so you go into a bit of a minefield with this, and I would say I think there's definitely a role for them, and I think there are some people that perhaps due to previous experiences would literally find it a very safe space. I think for me, you know, I go down the line of women's only space, but that, you know, that's how you self-identify, and you know that would include any trans person, any non-binary person, or whatever. And I think that there is groups of people that almost would need that to get started, because they would be so put off by you know, having a mixed group. So I think yes, but I think you have to caveat that with that's whoever self-identifies. And without being awful, I think if some people, if there are those that say, well, I wouldn't want to go to that in case there's someone that's non-binary or trans, I think I could probably use it as a self-selection. And if people can't be around those people, then they probably should set up their own group, as I would see it. And I think I'd be however unpolitically or politically correct that is, that's where I would stand. That would just be it from my own personal point of view. I'd be interested to see what my fellow panel members made of that.
Yeah, Ruth, you've got a comment.
Well, in terms of, I suppose, being very clear on what, how inclusive or who we're welcoming to the group, I suppose there's the London Bike Kitchen. They've labelled their, they've got their WAG nights, which is women and gender variant nights. So they're being very clear that, okay, well, this is a space for women, but that under that umbrella we are including trans women and non-binary people. So that's being very clear from the outset that this is not, if you believe your women only spaces are trans exclusionary, then this is not the place for you. And I suppose it depends on a lot of the rationale for myself personally for being with a women's group is because generally men are faster and also more competitive. I mean, this is a big generalization. I've been on men's only groups which have been very welcoming and very very welcoming to the slowest cyclist as well. But I think that's the fear whenever you turn up where it's just men, is that, oh, but this is going to be, we're going to be bombing along at like 25 miles an hour and I'm going to get left behind. So if you're turning up to a cycling group and there are some trans people there, as long as the group's agreeing that, okay, well, this is the pace that we are at, we're going to be inclusive to the slowest person, for example, I couldn't see a problem with that. I mean, that's my own personal opinion, of course.
Yeah, we've got lots of questions there that we haven't managed to get through, so if panelists are happy, then I will share the questions afterwards and we can go through some of the ones we haven't had the chance to. But just in the last couple of minutes, I'd really love to hear your final thoughts, so just 20 to 30 seconds from each of you. And Lorraine, we'll start with you. What one thing do you think needs to be done to make cycling clubs and groups more inclusive and diverse? What's the golden bullet?
It is about that welcome. It's about saying it's not just about saying you're welcome. It's about people being able to feel that they're welcome. Really, other folk have said it. I can't say more than that. Really, I think that is the key. That's the key. Thank you, Bex.
I think we should take, I don't know if I'm allowed to name drop these, but two sort of into my head as being very powerful for women in fitness generally are the This Girl Can movement and Park Run. And I think we need to take the best bits of the inclusivity of those campaigns or organisations and embed them into cycling. And I think if we with the welcome in that, we're on to a real winner.
Lovely, thank you. Samra?
I really agree with both of them. I think for me, empowering members of the local community to help plan and deliver the initiatives. We know that research demonstrates the benefits of scheme being run by local knowledge insiders and trusted networks of voluntary and community groups that are better placed to broker relationships. And from our experiences, we actually abide by that because our ride leaders are all from the community that we operate at and act as role models. And our team of volunteers of ride leaders, many of whom started initially as participants themselves, ensure our groups are very welcoming. It has a fun element to it, and it has a supportive environment to ensure repeat participation. I think that's really, really key.
Perfect, thank you so much. And Ruth, the hardest task, because now you have to go last, but what's your one thing we should be doing?
Well, it's hard because I think Samra hit it on the head, really, hit the nail on the head, is that if you are wanting to be a cycling advocate and you are not necessarily from a group that's underrepresented in cycling, you need to go out and ask. You need to ask what people need. You need to find the champions within those communities that will take on that want to share that passion that you've got. And really it's an empowering them and lifting them up. It's not about you. You know, it's not about that you might want to see more cycling in your area, but they've got to share your vision and passion as well. And if you, especially in the sort of communities that I've been working in, the mismatch is generally, the desire is absolutely there, but maybe the skills aren't. So I see that's my role, is sort of upskilling, but it's got to be led by them, and I can't say, well, you've got to do this. They have to want that and be seen. They want to see that that is valuable to them.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, all of you. Some really key takeaways there. And I think something that was mentioned at the very beginning is about the culture of a group meshing together, and whatever that culture is, whether it's the bike you ride, the clothes you wear, you know, how you identify, whatever it might be, is until we get that sort of that cultural movement happening, then there's still work to be done. But thank you all so much for your time and for your thoughts and involvement and commitment to making cycling as inclusive and diverse as possible. There's obviously some fantastic stuff happening in your groups, and I really hope that people watching have taken some great things from that, and we can continue the excellent work that's happening all over the country. So final things for me to say is, obviously this webinar has been part of the Cycling UK's Women's Festival of Cycling, which is happening through for the next couple of days till the 31st of July. So please do take a look at the websites being shown on the screen there, at the other events that we've got coming up. If anybody you think would like to see this webinar and they've missed it, it's been recorded, so that will be available. And thank you to everyone for watching and for your contributions. Sorry we didn't get a chance to look at all of the questions, but just so much discussion, we were never going to get through everything. So just a final thank you and goodbye from us, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.
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 Nice to meet you.
Bye. Nice to meet you.